Here's the situation so far. We have two containers in our production app, and they each have a well-defined purpose. Their jobs are getting done pretty nicely. So now, naturally, we're going to throw a wrench into the works. Now we want to send a copy of the to-do list as an email. Now this involves a couple of new concepts and requirements. First of all, we want this thing to run in the background. We're not going to send email inside our application. We're actually going to make use of a third-party software service to do it for us, because sending email is hard and messy. Now, talking to external services can add a lot of latency, and it can be really unpredictable. And we want to also be able to track the state of a multi-step process. Our service provider will have their own abstraction over email, and we want to track if an email got an error, or bounced, or got delivered, lots of different states and interesting things that happen here. Another thing to note is that this is entirely a separate domain from the rest of our application system. Sending email through an external service isn't even close to the same as providing a REST API over to-do items. And since these concerns are so separate, if we put them in the same application, we'd be separating them by an abstraction anyway. So this seems like a kind of a silly example, but it brings up the big question here, which is, when should I write a microservice? Well, your first clue that you should is that your concerns are completely separate. If you have two sets of data that don't reference each other at all, that's a good clue that your concerns are pretty separate. Having a service focus on one responsibility enhances its cohesion, which makes it easier to understand and work with the whole thing all at once. The smaller your system is, the easier it is to work with. Another feature of microservices that can be desirable is that you can reuse this service across multiple other services. Having a single service in your system that handles all the messiness around email means that more parts of your system can now send email without having to worry about the details. Another reason to ship a microservice is that your release schedules are separate. If you only ever update something once every 6 months, it helps if it's small and easy to ramp up on. Plus, this helps compartmentalize risk. You won't bring down your whole application stack because of a bad bug fix in the email system. One other reason to use a microservice instead of just building something into an existing service is separate scaling. Docker lets you spin up more copies of a service if the existing ones are swamped or if you just need more capacity. You don't need more copies of your API server to handle higher email volume, so separating it out can make a lot of sense. In the end, this is a really delicate balance. Try to look into the future, write down the pros and the cons of creating a new service versus building out one that already exists, and use your best judgment. Now, having said all that, we're going to make a new microservice. All those other reasons don't matter, because I want to demonstrate to you how to do this with our system. So play along, trust me, even though this seems like a toy example and maybe even a little bit silly. In our next video, we'll talk about the technology choices that we're going to make for our new service.